Hey, what's up, everybody? Just a quick message from Chrissy and Nathan to let you know that this episode was recorded in the before times. We banked a bunch of episodes long before we were all locked in our homes, going slowly mad with nothing to do. So if you're wondering why there are no quippy references to how my life exists only in Animal Crossing now, that is why. We were together then. We are far apart now. But we still have some wonderful episodes for you. So please to enjoy Poltergeist. Welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian go into the light of the 80s movies that we think we love or love to hate with modern eyes to see how well they hold up or don't. This is Poltergeist, a movie from 1982.
The house looks just like the one next to it. And the one next to that. And the one next to that. A young couple live in it.
Give Ken a kiss.
You are so obnoxious.
With their 3 children.
Of course you have honey chew each bite 10 times.
And something more.
They're here.
Sweetie, remember last night? Do you remember when you woke up and you said you were here?
Uh-huh.
Well, who did you meet? Who's here?
TV people.
Something's funny going on here next door. Something,
We were wondering if maybe you had experienced any disturbances lately.
What kind of disturbances?
I don't know what hovers over this house. I've never sensed anything like it.
That thing is in there with my baby.
they're hundreds.
Now Steven Spielberg crosses a frightening new threshold into a world within our own. Its form is revealed.
What is it?
Its focus is clear. And the games are over. Poltergeist. It knows what scares you.
Does it know what scares you? I think it knows 8 things that scare literally everyone. All right, Poltergeist. Have you seen it? What's your history?
Yes. So because, when I was younger, I was all things nuts about Spielberg and Lucas. I ended up seeing this at some point. I don't remember when. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I've revisited it for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I definitely saw this movie when I was a kid. This is one of the movies that my dad edited out the really scary parts of, so I never had a particular affection for it. I didn't think it was that scary.
It's a lot of talking.
It's just a lot of talking, and it's a lot of
without that
disagreeing. Yeah. So I remember the creepiness. and the paranormal people coming into the house, and he left in the parts where stuff got sucked in. I think the only part he really took out was the face peeling.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
Yeah. Because I remember being a bit surprised by that part. Yeah, so Poltergeist. It is one of those movies that you only remember the big moments of, and then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh shit, there's 2 other hours on either side of all those things. It's so slow. So slow. But so it starts with like the cute little family and they're in their cute little, like tract house, and it's all very cute and it's all very the same.
Yeah, this is very much a Steven Spielberg film. You know, it's interesting because this is basically, it's a horror movie, but it's like a horror movie for the mainstream audience.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah, it's a horror movie within the wrapper of a Spielberg film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of the structure and things. He was one of the writers. He was the producer of it. Mm-hmm. Tobe Hooper is the director. And for those of you that don't know, there's a lot of controversy over who actually directed it.
Is there?
Yeah, so this is a whole big Hollywood mythos thing of who actually directed Poltergeist. A lot of people say it was Steven Spielberg, you know, even though Tobe Hooper is still the credited director. Mm-hmm. He was coming off of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right, and he did like some Friday the 13th, right? Something like that.
So a hold of my film knowledge.
Okay.
But yeah, so no, Tobe Hooper. So my gut of where I lie on the whole is that Spielberg. So Tobe Hooper is still the director, but Spielberg is one of those people who he gets on set, he gets so enthusiastic in terms of just like, oh, and we should do this. Okay, do that, that he's just kind of so excitable that it could easily seem like he was calling all the shots. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah, that seems like a Steven Spielberg thing to do.
Yeah, and here you've got Tobe Hooper. I even read that he did a bit of that on Used Cars with Robert Zemeckis, and it was Kurt Russell who kind of said, look, I can take directions from that dude, or I can take directions from you, but I can only take directions from one person, and who's it going to be? And Spielberg goes like, oh, so sorry.
Oopsies.
Yeah. Kurt Russell.
I mean, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like, oh my God, I have this great story. I can't direct everything. I can't be everywhere at once. Would you take this? Take this one. Yeah. And I'm just going to stop by, and then I'm going to be like, I love this and I love that and I want to touch this and I want to move that.
Yeah. And I've for sure been guilty of that too.
Oh, me too. Me too, 100%.
Yeah. And I felt like this Spielberg was so invested in this that he couldn't stop himself from just contributing and being a part of the process, and it just ended up kind of overshadowing the literal actual director. And it sounds like Toby was okay with it.
I mean, wouldn't you be if you were like, oh no, Steven Spielberg, get out of here, would you? Like,
he was just happy to be invited to the party.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was like an impending director's strike that I don't know if it actually ended up happening, but Spielberg had to pick one or the other between this or E.T., and so he picked E.T. And so
not a bad choice.
Right, exactly. And so, but he still managed to be on the set of this. And
well, that's the thing about the kind of people who like got to stick their fingers in all the pies, is that they have a lot of energy to get around to all the different pies. Like, and I also like this whole movie. There's so much incredibly valuable Star Wars merch in that kid's room. Everywhere you turn, there's Star Wars.
I was watching this, and it's like, so there's like in all these shots, like Star Wars, Rubik's Cubes, Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, tons and tons of stuff. Like if we went back and did like Stranger Things, and you lathered on this much amount of stuff in the background, you'd say, oh, this is way overkill. You're just trying to like stoke our nostalgia. But here we've got an actual like 1982 movie that's got all this stuff in.
It does.
And I legitimately feel, because there's been a lot of debate, like Robert Zemeckis just having tons of stuff in Back to the Future too, of like, oh, Pepsi and all these brands and things like that. I genuinely believe that they weren't trying to like, product placement. They were trying to ground it in like, oh, this is the stuff that you've got in your house.
Yeah, and it is.
Yeah.
No, it is.
Like literally still.
Yeah. Not only literally still. Yes, I have those sheets. Like they're not like usable bed sheets anymore, but I've made them into pillows and stuff. But also like my son's is 9 and his room is a Minecraft room, so if you were if we get poltergeisted, which I have to say, like, my family is probably like in the upper reaches of like poltergeistable families. I have a very ornery 14-year-old, she's gonna get poltergeisted one of these days. But like if you shot a movie at our house, you'd be like, oh, in this Minecraft bedroom where there's every single Minecraft thing, like the overkill. Yeah, it's really real. And they kind of show you like at the very beginning, the like realness of this family who are kind of slobs, even though the mom is like doing her best. Like the teenage daughter has potato chip bag under her pillow. The kid, like the middle kid, is like asleep with his baseball hat on. The dad is just like passed out in a chair until the TV turns itself off.
It's interesting of like Spielberg, his fascination with the suburban kind of like family, and you get to see this in 3 movies. You get to see it in Close Encounters, you get to see it in Poltergeist, and you get to see it in E.T. And you get to see all these different interesting shades and versions of it. The one thing that I'm most fascinated by is that these are all like waspy, all-American families, and he doesn't ever... Well, the one thing we never see are any Jewish people in any of these stories.
How do you know they're not Jewish?
I mean, they are so blonde and waspy. But I mean, you don't... He doesn't... It took... It really, you don't have... Spielberg, I think admittedly in some of his interviews, never really confronted his Jewishness until Schindler's List in like 93. And it's hard to imagine... That's only 11 years from this movie.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, like, it's not... I mean, it's like we said, it's kind of a funny, it's kind of a poppy look at this family.
Very Americana,
yeah, like,
suburban.
They are having all of these cliche
football.
Friends over for the football game, and they're having a remote control war because they both have the same controller that controls, and it only has 2 buttons, up and down, and they're fucking with the neighbors to be like up, down, up, down, up, down, Sesame Street, or no, Mr. Rogers football. So that's kind of a funny look at it. But then it's also like kind of dark, right? Like Craig T. Nelson is not nice to anyone in his family. Like, I don't know. Like he's that like distant dad who, like, she's, in her cute little nighties every night. Like, and he falls asleep on the couch, even except for that one scene where they're like getting high together. But even then, he's she's trying to tell him a story, and he's reading a book about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that he's reading a book about Ronald Reagan while she's smoking a reefer,
rolling a joint. Yeah. But she's also trying to talk to him and connect to him, and he's just like, until the conversations turns to being about him.
Yeah.
That's when he finally decides to engage with her.
Well, I do feel that they're part of, I think also, like, each of these 3 families, these American families that Spielberg has kind of shown, has also shown them to be a little broken, too. And out of all of them, like Close Encounters and E.T. and this one strikes me as the least broken out of all of them. They're just not... I think they're victim to what a lot of American, or just a lot of families are, is that they're all kind of going their own direction.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think ultimately what happens throughout the whole movie is that they all come together.
Yes.
That's ultimately the direction that they've got to go.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're just barely imperfect.
Yeah. The bird dies, and like... First of all, she's about to flush it, and it's like, are you crazy? Are you insane? You can't flush a bird down the toilet.
Right.
But then they like bury it, and it's blah blah blah.
And then the 2 other kids are like yelling at the.
Can we dig it up and see the bones? It's like, careful what you wish for, kid.
Speaking of which, we missed a great opportunity of an animated dead bird. That would have been awesome.
Oh my god. If it just a little boop, just like all the skeletons are coming up at the end, and it's like,
and then one just like,
it's still got a little bit of flesh on its bones. Yeah, and write a letter, Nathan. Have them go back and add that digitally. But also, like, there's a scene where they're having breakfast. It's like we're getting to know them slice of life, which, by the way, like, we spend so much time getting to know them slice of life. We could have, come on now. Anyway,
It was a different time.
yeah, it was. It really was. Like and you see it in the credits, right? The credits take forever, and the credits of is it Clouds that are behind the credits for this one, or am I thinking of Red Dawn? But it's just like the credits just go on forever, and now I think credits are almost invisible. Like they're just happening and the movie's going. Anyway, they have breakfast, and there's so much breakfast, it's insane. They have cereal. There is melon. There are waffles. There's every kind of breakfast. There's too much breakfast. What does that mean? So much breakfast. It was crazy. And then he's got a nightmare clown in his room that seems to always be perched in a chair pointed directly at its bed.
And a nightmare tree.
The Whomping Willow is what I referred to it as.
Yeah, it's other than the big special effect ghosts and things like that. There's a couple of, I think, really nice situations that they've put in here that are like, these are the iconic things that kids are afraid of.
The tree outside the window.
The tree outside the window, and then the scary doll. You know,
the scary clown.
And then,
doll. Yes,
but then you've also got that for the parents too, like those scary nightmare situations of the swimming pool, like the kid drowning or falling into a swimming pool. And not only is that like a fear that they express, but that, you know, when they're just talking casually, it's like, oh, what if it's like as they're digging the pool, one of the kids goes out. It's like, no, we'll be fine. We'll do a fence or whatever. But then later they've got the daughter is missing, and they're like, the swimming pool. And they dive out there, and it's been raining, so there's a bit of water, and then but later just the whole panic of a lost child. Like, where is our lost child?
That is literally every nightmare I've ever had.
And so this movie is poking at both kids and adults' worst nightmares.
It is, and successfully, because this movie kind of has it all, because it has these like really creepy atmospheric things that are just like like when she's the TV is fuzzing and Carol Ann is in the parents' bed and she's just like slowly crawling over to the TV and the light is flickering. That made me feel afraid. Nothing else in this movie did, like skeletons popping up, a demon head launching out of its closet. Like, nope. I'm like, nope, just those creepy like. Oh, also it was 2:37 a.m. when the TV went off its broadcast, which is obviously not a time that anything would stop being broadcast. So do you think that was a Shining reference?
Probably. Spielberg was a big Kubrick fan.
Okay. Okay, so then...
But yeah, it's like as long as it takes to kind of wind up, like at 40 minutes into the movie, the shit is going insane. Like, it is going full balls out at that point.
That's the moment when it starts, when the TV and the things explode and it comes into the wall and she goes, they're here. And then, boom, we're off to the races. Yeah. But still, it starts with silverware and chairs. Okay, so it's so bananas. The chairs, like, she looks over, Mom looks over, she's clearing up breakfast. It's just her and Carol Ann. The chairs are all moved away from the
Carol
table.
Ann's the little girl who looks like the little blonde girl.
Who has the straightest bangs I've ever seen in my entire life.
She literally looks like the boy from Close Encounters with a wig on.
Oh, no. Okay, so... Oh, also there's a scene in this movie where the teenage daughter is going to school. She's like in her uniform and she's getting on her bike to go to school. And the three men who are digging the pool are like, hey, babe. They're like catcalling her and being like, go, you want to get in the pool with me, baby? And like, they're being disgusting. And she like flips them off. And the mom's watching out the window just like, oh, how silly.
She'll have a whole life full of that.
And then that same guy like reaches through and is like drinking and eating her breakfast. That's creepy. That's the danger. Those three guys are more dangerous than the poltergeist. Then she looks away again, and the chairs are all stacked up on the table in a thing that is impossible to explain.
Yeah, and that was a good effect because it's all done while the camera's turned away for just a moment.
A really short moment.
Yeah, and you know this is there's no CG.
Nope.
It would not be impressive today because you knew they could just stitch together two different shots. But yeah, she just turns away, and they're all like piled up on top of the table,
balanced in an impossible
Yeah.
way. So then Craig T. Nelson gets home, and she is drawn all over the floor, and she's like, check this out. And she's showing him how the chairs move and stuff. And then
That's a lot of fun too.
She puts Carol Ann down, and she's like, watch this. There she goes.
Puts
Like
a football helmet on her.
experimenting with scooching your daughter across the floor. She's psyched, but not for long.
Yeah, the thing that's really cool about this is that we get that first part of like everything just starting to happen, and that suspense and tension of of all these things like beginning to the normal world being violated and like figuring out what's going on, and then we kind of cut to it being normalized now, and like they've already gone through the 10 hours of dealing with this, and now that it's kind of normalized, it's like, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
And then it's even better when like even more time has passed and they finally reach out to these like parapsychologists.
Oh, I love that part.
Yeah.
But the
Such
next,
a great
next
device.
creepy thing that happens is that the tree tries to eat the kid. Like
Yeah,
the,
oh, yeah.
The Whomping Willow's like, oh, what a delicious boy. Smash, grab, in you go. Like, and is trying to eat the little boy. Meanwhile, that's a misdirection. These ghosts are capable of misdirection because as soon as everybody's attention is on trying to get rid of the suburban tornado and rescue the boy from the tree, Carol Ann's just up in her room getting sucked into the closet, into the light of the closet. And like, I love that part because when it starts to suck everything out of her room, from under her bed just comes an impossible amount of glitter. just loose glitter. So there's
Every
like
parent's nightmare.
it is loose glitter is every human's nightmare, and she's got 3 pounds of it under her bed. And then of course, Carol Ann is gone. Where is she? She's not in the pool. Like no one can find her. Where is she? She's in the TV. She's in the TV with the TV people. What? So scary.
Yeah, and that's the iconic image of like the little girl touching the TV.
Yeah.
But
there is a part where, okay, so the tree is eating the boy. Chomp, chomp, chomp.
Nope.
The mom is holding on to a post, and Craig T. Nelson is trying to get the boy out. And she's like, hold on, daddy's coming. I'm like, no. Let go of that post. Go get your kid out of that tree. Like, I would be clawing my way up that tree. She's just like holding on to a post. That really bugged me. She'll make up for it later, but still.
Yeah, she will. There is a lot of, just like in Aliens, there is a lot of kind of like, get away from my babies, bitch. A lot of strong mother rage in this movie.
So they go. Then he's like, immediately he goes to the science folk, and he's just like sitting there, like smoking a cigarette, like, oh god.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost like the same. So Ghostbusters, what was like 2 years later. Apparently, the go-to place for like psychology, parapsychology, and ghosts studies was like universities, like these small little testing labs. So we see him in one of these testing facilities, and they're an interesting set of characters from different backgrounds and things like that. And it's just such a wonderful device of bringing them in. They're taking this seriously, but yet they've never really seen anything remotely to this, like this. And Craig T. Nelson is just so over it. He's had to live it for like a week or two or whatever. How much time has passed?
I think it's only been a day. I do. Like, I think Carol Ann's gone for a day, and they go like,
or even like 2 days or whatever. But yeah, he's just so over it at this point.
And then there's that really funny moment where they're about to go in and they're getting all their, oh, wait, let us get the equipment for you. Oh, I got a video once of a car moving across the thing. It took 18 hours.
7 hours, and it was imperceptible by the human eye, but we've got it on tape.
Yeah.
And
he's like, great.
Yeah, and he opens the door, and then shit is just flying all over the place like a whirlwind.
Yep. And they're like, the lights go, oh, they'll go 2 more times in the next, whatever. It's like old hat to them. And I do love that. I love that, so that flip. But they're still skeptical, right? The people are like, they could have a CB radio. This could be this, that could be that. Shit falls out of the ceiling. And then, like, immediately like that never lets up. Shit goes down. Like the lights, they come down the stairs, right? And Carol Ann passes through. The mom. And I will say this, like, even though they are clearly like highly stressed and in a very terrible situation, Craig T. Nelson and Jo Beth Williams, their sweater game is still on point. Because they're both wearing pretty fabulous sweaters.
Well, I mean, it's still an emergency, but
Right.
I mean, we can't lose what makes us important.
Exactly. And then the house farts on them and bites a guy. And then they stay up all night drinking whiskey and talking about creepy stuff during that night. So I think it's just just a couple of days. Like I think Carol Ann gets taken and maybe they try and figure out for a day, and like, so I think it's maybe like a week.
Well, it's at least a week because his boss says you've missed a lot of work.
But so in the night is the part that my dad edited out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
Where the one boy researcher is like, I'm gonna go make something to eat.
And I think he was Steven Spielberg's personal assistant.
Oh,
actually,
interesting.
Or one of his assistants. Yeah.
But this man takes a steak, a raw defrosted steak, out of the fridge of the people he's just researching at, and sets it on the counter. What is wrong with that person? Mm-hmm. What a monster! He deserves what he got. And then there's a really gross part.
There's one gross part.
Yeah. Well, that part was gross.
There's a lot of gross parts in this movie.
Oh, here's speaking of gross part. The next day, she puts her 10-year-old son and a dog in a cab, unattended, and sends them off to Grandma's house. Remember 1982 when you could just put a child in a cab?
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah. That's the thing, is that you just saw him kind of leaning out of the window. It's like, is that kid driving a car?
Bye,
no, it's a
honey.
cab. Yeah.
You'll be safer than your sister who's in the ceiling. So, I guess call me if you get to Grandma's. I don't know. I'm dealing with some other stuff. So,
yeah. This movie, it definitely feels like Spielberg just wanted to fit so many moments and gags and moments that were just exciting him or nagging at him, or he just came up with, and wanted to cram it all because there's so much in this movie.
And they really should have not had a third of it. So the boss takes him up and is like, well, we can't lose you. What are you doing? You're got a lot of video equipment over at your house. Not going to leave us and go to another agency, are you?
Yeah, we introduced the whole idea that apparently Craig T. Nelson is in real estate, and his boss is basically the dude in charge of the company that has that has created all the homes in this suburban
Craig T.
area.
Nelson has sold them.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't worry about this. We'll just move this cemetery. We're just going to move this cemetery. We'll just move it. It's not a big deal. Nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Why should you care?
Yeah, and now we're foreshadowing basically what is creating all this paranormal activity, that their home is built on a cemetery.
Yeah. Okay, so then we get this psychic. The
That's
lady
the thing.
comes back.
So it's interesting. So why is it only their house that is such a nexus point of the paranormal activity? Is it literally only their house, or is it maybe also their shed, but we just don't see we don't see any of the interesting things that happen there? Is it just the perimeter of their one house, or
Okay, well, and so all right, if we're gonna get into it, let's get into it. So a poltergeist isn't a ghost. A poltergeist is like an energy, and a poltergeist doesn't haunt a place; it haunts a person. So a poltergeist literally would not be the thing that would be haunting because your house is on a cemetery. It attaches to a person.
It's an iconic name that they wanted to use.
Right, but it's not the right name for what this is, which is actually a haunting, right?
Right.
And I think, so the psychic shows up, this person that we all know, the thing that you think of when you think of this movie is that little girl touching the TV screen and then this tiny little psychic lady, because the way she looks and the way she talks is this house is clean, Zelda, yeah, that's
Zelda
who we think
Rubinstein.
of.
Yeah.
And when she shows up, she sort of explains, they're attracted to Carol Ann because of her energy and her light and her warmth. And to her, it's just a child. Mm-hmm. And to us, it would be the beast. And to his bowling league, he's known as Jeff. You know, like she's just like explaining everything.
Yeah, it's interesting when you've got these people, the experts, who have probably never ever seen a real ghost.
Mm-hmm. They haven't, and now they're like all
except
this
maybe
crazy shit.
Zelda, who's kind of the Grand Master Jedi
Yeah.
of all this stuff.
Well, and I hate the attitude that this movie takes towards her, because the parents, although they sought help, and the people they sought to help are like, this is the person who's going to help you, because Craig T. Nelson is openly hostile to her. And even the mom is like skeptical. And I was just waiting for her to have even one moment where she's like, she does like like admonish him a bit, because he's like, I am telling her the answer. I'm telling her psychically. Eye roll. You're rolling your eye. You're rolling your eye at a psychic. A tree tried to eat your kid. Like,
what's out of bounds at this point?
At this point, yeah. So what do you get out of being a dick to her? Because he's like, oh, I am telling her. I'm telling her with my mind. Har, har, har. Meanwhile, upstairs, there's 3 pounds of loose glitter in a tornado that won't leave your daughter's room. Chill out. And she's like, I just don't like trick answers. But they do nothing but yell at her and tell her no as she's trying to help them through this. And I would just love it if she lost patience for once and was like, would you? I am fine. You get your daughter out of the ceiling then. You know? Ugh. Okay, rant over. She shows up, she tries to help. What do they end up doing? Throwing tennis balls into the closet. And they come out gooey on the other side.
Yeah, is this the first appearance in cinema of ectoplasm?
I think so.
Yeah, it's kind of pinkish embryo goo.
It's so gross.
It's really, yeah, it's kind of, it feels like it is kind of like embryonic goo in this one, and not
gross.
quite the wonderful, colorful slime that Ghostbusters will eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a little too organic for my own.
Yeah, it's chunky.
Comfort. Yeah.
It's chunky.
So the plan is this: once they establish the point of in and the point of out, Zelda is like, she's basically trying to get Carol Ann to lure, because she says there's 2 things happening. One, there's a bunch of trapped spirits. We later learn it's because they're on top of a cemetery, who can't go into the light. And there's this negative force. So we need to get Carol Ann to draw all of them into the light, but not go into the light. So she's like, Craig T. Nelson. Oh, she's like, who is she more afraid of? Like, who does the punishing?
Yeah, that was interesting, because that's always like the tough parent thing. It's like, which of the 2 parents is Carol Ann most afraid of?
And they're both like, what? No, she's not. We're never afraid of. No, never. Well, he does the punishing. Well, no, I try to be firm but fair. And it's like, is that what's important? And then she's like, yell at her. Tell her you give her a spanking if she doesn't do what you say. And he's like, well, I've never spanked in my life. It's like, are you not aware of what's happening? Like, who cares? And it just felt like, to me, artificial tension. Just adding more conflict for the sake of, because otherwise they're just standing there, throwing tennis balls into a closet. But it was annoying to me, because then she's like, lie to her. You need to lie to her and tell her whatever about the light. And she's like, I hate you for making me lie to my daughter. And it's like, bitch, your daughter is in the outer space where ghosts live. If you get her back from there, all is forgiven. Yeah. I lie to my kids to get them to do their chores. I lie to my kids to get them to empty the dishwasher. Like, you're trying to pull her out from a nether realm. Ugh. Oh, and so and she's like, all right, tie the rope around my waist. Zelda's like, I'll go get her. And the mom's like, no, she won't come to you. Like, it doesn't seem like you should go. It seems like I should go. And they have this little bit of back and forth, but there's this hilarious line, which is so well delivered, where Zelda Rubinstein goes, you're right, you go. I will point out that at no point in that little exchange does Craig T. Nelson go, well, I'll go. He is hanging back like, yeah, you 2 ladies work it out. You figure out which of you 2 is going to go. And I get it that they need to send the mom, but like, Craig T. Nelson could have at least been like, I can try and go. I can maybe try. And this is like, I can't ever help but to like see the opportunity for comedy. But I think it would have been hilarious if like, so the mom jumps into the closet and like they're holding on to the rope or whatever. And she's like, take up the slack on the other side. All right, here we go. This has got to be very careful. Now, should we discuss my fee? Should we just really quickly while it's just you and me up here, talk about what Zelda's getting for Zelda out of all this? But Craig T. Nelson stops listening to her and starts trying to jerk them back out the wrong way. Like, that part seems so unjustifiable to me. You know?
Yeah, tension for tension's sake.
Exactly. And then...
It's okay when people act irrationally.
Yeah.
But when there's so much of it and it starts to really feel... Like, I feel like... like some TV shows are really guilty of this because they've really got to milk out as much conflict and tension as possible per episode.
Yes, and I totally hear you, and I understand. Like we got to have conflict. There has to be something that's working against them. Like we have to have something more than the fact that like she's in this nether realm where something is trying to keep her from being rescued. You know, just like in Stranger Things when they sort of send,
that was actually the show I was secretly thinking of, when they just have these sequences where all the kids are taking totally different sides in it, and sometimes it just feels like they've just made you the grouchy kid who's got to complain about everything.
Exactly.
Now, you know.
But it didn't make any sense to me that if you're as a parent, if you're in a situation where you have no knowledge, there's nothing you can do, you know, and you've turned to these people for help, to be at every turn saying, no, I won't do that. No, I don't like that. All right, well, you say not to, but I'm going to try and jerk them back out. It just was annoying to me, you know, tension for tension's sake. And it's like, ugh, enough. So they fall out. They're covered in goo. They're like, get him into the bath, which we see at the beginning. Zelda Rubinstein's like, bath full of warm water. Is that ready? Is that ready? And Craig T. Nelson is like, yeah, I filled the bath with water. What's that going to help? You know, it's like, put him in the bath. Why don't you get that goo off of him? And then he does, everybody knows the classic 1982 version of CPR, which is to yell at someone, breathe. That's all. Breathe. Breathe!
You've never quit a fight. Now, come on.
Breathe! And it works. She wakes up and goes, hi, Daddy. And then we get that iconic line. But I love that she sort of fixes herself for the camera, and then she's like, this house is clean.
And she's wrong.
She is wrong. Boy, is she wrong. Oh, so what do you think of that head that comes out? So when Craig T. Nelson starts pulling, a big old head comes out and like tries to bite at him. What did you think of the effectiveness of that effect?
I liked it.
You did?
Especially from the side. From the side, it's probably a miniature. From the front, it looks like a different model that's larger, more life size, which I didn't dig as much, but the side one was pretty cool.
I guess I didn't like that it had like a humanistic type form. You know, like,
well, there's not a lot of rules in this movie because again, they disproved that the whole Poltergeist, which they wanted to name the movie,
right?
You know, the whole concept is kind of the reverse of the actual situation, and so I feel like a lot of these situations and scenarios are really kind of like, oh, what if we had a cool haunted house?
Yeah.
These different things could happen. So there's not like an ultimately unifying, rock solid like logic or mythos to how these things happen. They're just all like really cool and awesome. And legitimately, a lot of them are cool and awesome.
But it's not tied in any sort of like real paranormal like research. Or,
then also, again, like a lot of these people are just guessing at how, you know, it's like
what's gonna
I mean, to be honest, like the so-called experts have never seen anything like this, and they're they seem pretty confident with the, like, you know, the etymology and like the psychology and like how these things actually happen somehow.
Right. Well, and I think like the psychic is is reading the room literally of like, okay, so there are all these spirits that are attracted to his warmth. There's something negative there. She's hearing it this way. Like, she's putting it together based on that. And so that's where her theories come from.
Yeah.
Okay, so Craig T. Nelson is like,
which is actually a great counterpoint to like these people who are in this university.
Yeah.
You know, who are just kind of going off of very scientific studies, you know?
Yeah. So then everything to me becomes so unbelievable because Craig T. Nelson's like, I quit my job or I got to go clean out my desk. And for some reason, I'm going to do that at night.
Yeah.
The nighttime is the best time for me to do that. And he says to them, as the moving truck is getting loaded, we're leaving tonight. Mm-hmm. Like, put the kids to bed, sure. But when I get back from going to quit my job, which I can only do at night, we're going to go. Mm-hmm. We all heard him say that. Mm-hmm. And then she decides to dye her hair. Like, their home is, like, we see the movers taking every single thing out of the house, but their house is full of stuff.
Yeah.
There's no way they're leaving tonight. Her bathroom is still full of every single bathroom thing. And she's like, you're going to dye your hair in the house that you're moving out of that night?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's... I like the idea that it feels like everything's done and life is going back to normal.
Right.
I like that. But yeah, some of the timelines things are just squeezed a bit too much.
They're not jumpy enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, they're too convinced too easily that they're going to be fine. Because she leaves the children
like, if it
alone
was
in
like
their room.
legitimately a poltergeist, as in it follows you.
Right.
What would have been exciting is that they've already moved.
Exactly.
And things are back to normal. They're settling into their house.
It's a year later.
Yeah.
You know.
Or even like 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
and they're starting to become normal again, and then things happen again.
Well, I'll tell you what though, like, she's got the kids each in their own beds. Which, by the way, that wicker bed we saw get destroyed. Did you just order the exact same model? But so the kids are alone in their bed, sleeping with the door closed, with their little dollies and stuff. Murder clown still perched, pointed directly at that child. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want it there. Who keeps putting it there? It's not him. He was not like, oh, can you get my favorite toy, the murder clown? Can you please perch that up so it watches me as I sleep? The mom is putting it there, clearly. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I can't keep my 9-year-old out of my bed when there's a thunderstorm. Like, I guess they say Carol Ann doesn't remember anything, but the brother does. Mm-hmm. There's no universe in which, like, my son, who is that same age, would not be, like, always... I would not be able to take a bath because he'd just be like, yeah, Mom, here's the thing, though. I'm going to need to, like, have a hand on you at every moment. Uh-huh.
Yeah, ultimately what they were doing is that the movie, like a lot of movies, needs to be a roller coaster. And so it needs to climb slowly back up for it to race down again. Mm-hmm. And... yeah, and then the problem is just that it's just they wanted everyone to be at ease, and the timeline is just so short for them for that to be real, you know. And ultimately, I mean, this movie did really well, and Spielberg is great at juicing those moments of releasing the tension and building the tension.
Yeah. But
sometimes you can just see you can see the machinery.
Yeah,
you know, you can see the conductor's hands, and like in this case, it was just a little too unbelievable, like you said. Like I would have.
They're too relaxed.
The problem is that he really wants these juicy, poppy, high concept stuff of, and it is honestly a great twist because people remember it of that it is built on a cemetery, and they just removed all the headstones.
But left the bodies.
Yeah, and so that's a great idea. The problem is it goes exactly against what the poltergeist concept is that they themselves established.
Right.
You know?
Well, and it's like at this point, nobody cares. You know, it's just like it's scary ghosts.
Yeah, and what could have worked was the whole idea of them moving and that it followed them, but then they would have had to create a brand new idea of
how and why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which
they could have. I
don't care about how and why. Like a haunting is happening. Okay. Like I mean, I guess they felt like they needed that explanation. but I would have been fine without it.
Yeah, well, they could have even moved in a different home in the same neighborhood.
Yes.
And then it would have, like, the whole neighborhood, but then they would have
Why
also...
is it still happening here?
Yeah, why is it still happening to us? Mm-hmm. You could have had it... I mean, again, there's still the situation is, why is it just under our house?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because
Which they don't answer, and they don't need to
end,
answer, honestly. Like, it's...
Because the last moments of the chaos, so, like, all hell breaks fucking loose. You know, as she's blow drying her hair, all hell breaks loose. That murder clown is attacking the kid. Carol Ann's being sucked into the bed. Like, everything's going nuts. Mm-hmm. And then she ends up in the pool.
They had more gags. They had a huge bucket of these moments and gags that they wanted to do.
Murder clown, stretchy hallway, can't climb out of the pool. Mm-hmm. Skeletons erupting, coffins bursting out. She calls for the neighbors, help me, help me, help me. They do come. Mm-hmm. They help her out of the pool. And then they nope the fuck out of there. The woman even says, oh my God, your children up there. Whatever kind of noise is that to make? And then they're like, well, good luck.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what I almost would have loved is that it goes batshit crazy like Gremlins, and everyone is in the neighborhood is like, "Oh fuck!"
It does though. Like when the coffins start exploding out of everywhere. You know, like a hydrant explodes. People's houses are like
but it's still like in the pretty much specific vicinity of just their house.
Yeah, and then their house gets sucked into
which is a great moment. Which is a great moment. Like,
but it also makes no sense.
Yeah, no. So like, the ending of Jaws is the same thing as a lot of these moments, to where if you're along for the ride, you'll buy it. There's no reason why the shark is going to have that air tank in his mouth. It's a real stretch. And that he's able to shoot it and then blows up so spoiler alert, that Jaws blows up because he's got that oxygen tank in his mouth.
Right.
But we've been along for the whole ride and we're willing to take one step and buy it. The problem is with this movie is that it's the same kind of logic. If they're along for the ride, they'll buy this. But there's too many of those, and it's in some ways we're not as along for the ride as we thought we were.
Because why is the boss on their doorstep?
But honestly, again, like I was okay with a lot of them.
Okay,
like it because it was a certain kind of movie. It's definitely less realistic, and it's a little more
sure
blown out.
Yeah. I get you. I get what you're saying. And here's a beautiful moment that I loved. Okay, so when the daughter comes home, the daughter's like, I'm going to go out with my friends. Bye. She goes. She's a smart one. She nopes out of there a whole bunch. But she gets dropped off just as the chaos is at its peak out of a Trans Am. She is covered in hickeys. And she's like, what's going on?
What is going on?
I just thought that was such a cute like background detail to have in there.
Yeah.
And then there's that moment, that classic horror movie moment of like, the keys. I can't find the keys. They drive to a motel.
They milk that maybe a little too long.
Yeah, so. But then they call it back though in a comedic way. They go to you see them checking into a motel or strolling into a motel, and the dad's like, I still don't have the keys, and the younger boy's like, here they are, Dad. You're not allowed to have keys anymore. Mm-hmm. And then the music, the ending music,
and it's a great ending.
So
it's a great ending moment where they go inside the hotel. Mm-hmm. 3-4 seconds later, the door opens again, and he pushes out the TV.
Yep.
And closes the door. That's a great ending.
It is a great ending. It is. But then, so the credit music that rolls is all like children being like la 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 la, which also doesn't fit with the movie. It's creepy.
This movie is a big grab bag.
It is.
It's a Halloween bag full of candy, and you're not always gonna like what you pull out. But there's also just a ton of.
Some of it's a full-size Snickers, and some of it's a handful of loose circus peanuts.
You're right. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a lot to say about this movie, right? So. I mean, do we feel like most people know about like the curse of it or whatever?
No, go ahead and get into that.
Okay, so I recommended on one of our other tapings the podcast My Favorite Murder, but there is an episode where they talk about the sort of curses of Poltergeist and also The Exorcist, and also just like the different cursed movies. So this whole trilogy was just kind of, there was a lot of tragedy. There's a lot of different places that you can look up, but like, and of course all of it's, you know, just terrible coincidence. But the little girl, so the little girl from the movies died under some tragic circumstances. Dominic Dunn, who played the older sister, died under some really sad circumstances. Like people like got injured on set, and just like a whole lot of things, bad things that happened in and around the movie Poltergeist that caused people to be like, oh, it was too real, you had too much stuff, which is like, no, wasn't really at all, you know.
Yeah, it's like the guy who opened King Tut's tomb later died of natural causes.
Yeah.
We want to kind of perpetuate like the haunted mythos
right.
of this stuff.
Yep. And so they wanted this movie to be an R, but they, you know, Spielberg and Tobe Hooper and whoever, like Catherine Kennedy probably successfully pleaded for it to be PG-13. Yeah. And so, you know, what do you think? Do you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I would say so. Honestly, watching, I had a good time, and there were enough enjoyable nuggets and moments throughout to kind of keep me going on. Like, we had just recently talked about a movie that I don't know if it's after this podcast or before this podcast, but we talking about how Red Dawn was just like a constant series of events, and you just got tired after a while. With this is a smorgasbord of supernatural events, and for me it worked in terms of carrying me along and
keeping you entertained.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was a roller coaster ride full of like candy and soda.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, and I will say, so we watched this movie with some friends who had never seen it before, and it has both it has like you said, the roller coaster ride of like, oh, that was scary, that did scare me, and this is stupid, that wouldn't ever scare anybody, and laughing at the ridiculous things that are in the movie, and like pointing out, like you said, that like, oh, look at the Star Wars sheets, you know, it had all of that, and so I think it was a good time watching it, if not a little long.
Yeah.
Okay, so of all of the movies of 1982, this movie came in 9. This is top 10, baby. Yeah. It was beat by movies we have done. That includes Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. We have done quite a bit of the top 10 of 1982.
Wow.
We have not done Rocky III. We didn't do that one, right? We did 4.
Yeah.
On Golden Pond, An Officer and a Gentleman, Porky's, and Arthur.
Maybe Porky's. I know.
Don't make me, Nathan. I don't wanna.
Well, I've never seen it.
Neither have I, but I know that I know what kind
we
of movie
know
it is.
Yeah. Well, going in with this strong idea of what it is, I mean that's the right material for the podcast.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So on a scale of one tennis ball that has been tossed through another realm to 1 to 10, what would you rate this movie?
I'm gonna rate this a little higher than I thought I would. I think I'm gonna give it a 7.
Okay.
Just because I found, again, like if you're into horror movies, this is kind of the Pepsi version of horror movies, but it's also kind of like the Spielberg version of horror movies. Like it's got a lot going on for it in terms of just fun, entertaining moments.
And I'll tell you what, it doesn't take itself too seriously at any point.
Yeah.
I think I got to go a little bit lower than that and go like a 6.5 because I did. There were just some moments where I was like, you lost me though in the terms of believability.
Yeah.
You just lost me in terms of like how a parent would behave, those types of things. But I
Yeah.
You can see the footprint of this on other horror movies that come.
Yeah.
You know.
Like The Burbs almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, God knows that the cliches and the lines from this movie, they're back, really held on and had like such a permanent place in the pop culture zeitgeist that, like, even if you've never heard of this movie or didn't know where they're from, you certainly know the images and the words that survived, and really like launched themselves into the entire lexicon of things that we know. Okay, so do you have a deep cut recommendation for Poltergeist? I found it kind of hard.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
So what I came up with, because I was having a hard time picking something, and I thought, like, I don't know, do I pick something that I think is similar but scary? And I decided, no. You know what I recommend? The TV show Supernatural. Now in its 15th season. I love it. It's a really good show. It's infinitely rewatchable if you want to find out about all things supernatural and figure out the difference between a poltergeist and a haunting and all the shit that's going on in this house. Watch the TV show Supernatural. Yeah, it's not perfect.
Cool.
But that's what I got.
So I'm going to recommend, this is a tough recommendation because it's behind a paywall. But if you've got Stitcher Premium, I'm going to recommend the podcast I Was There Too. So episode 29, so basically it talks about people who played smaller roles in big movies.
Ooh.
And so this is the dude who tears his face off, who was Spielberg's assistant, like on Raiders of the Lost Ark and things like that. But so on episode 29, he talks all about Poltergeist and the making of Poltergeist.
Interesting.
So that's a great... And then I think the next episode, he talks about some of the other Spielberg stuff that he did, which I think was like Raiders of the Lost Ark. But yeah, so that would be my recommendation. It's a great, neat 45-minute dive into actually being on the set there.
And I've heard good things about that podcast.
Yeah, it's a good one. It is defunct. And so yeah, there's maybe about 5 episodes that are on for free, like if you want to just get it, but everything else is behind Stitcher Premium because it's part of Earwolf.
Yeah.
So
cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. You can find Chrissy and all things NCT at nctphoenix.com, NCTPHX online. You can find everything about Most Excellent Pod at mostexcellentpod.com. We have an Instagram and a Facebook. Find us. Do all the things you're supposed to do, like rate, review, tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell a poltergeist. And where can people find Squishy Studios and Nathan Blackwell?
SquishyStudios.com. And if you want, we've got Facebook, we've got the YouTubes, and
the tubes of you.
The tubes of you. And if you want to follow our upcoming projects, subscribe to the Squishy Studios newsletter at our website.
Yeah, do it. Sign up for it. Thank you for listening. We truly appreciate you. And hey, when you're out there in the world, please remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
I'll be right. Oh, shit. That's the
Wrong
other
movie. Wrong movie. They're here.